is. We ready upstairs? All right, cool. Feel like y'all are so far away from me, and they got right down here. So that's a good thing.
They're Baptist.
Oh, is that back row Baptist? Uh-huh. My grandfather always said you got to get up under the spout where the glory comes out. I don't know what that meant, honestly, but he was always first or second row kind of people. I was kind of on the side because I wanted you to be able to see the monitor tonight. So obviously what you're looking at right there is an iceberg. So tonight we're going to eventually get to Luke chapter 6, if you want to find that in your Bible. Going to kind of examine and talk about verses 43, 44, and 45. But if you watched any movies or Google anything about icebergs, you generally see the thing that's floating out in front of you. If you remember the movie Titanic, we know that an iceberg is ultimately the thing that caused that ship to sink. Now, we assumed it was giant gashes and giant things that happened within the Titanic, but when they found the Titanic on the bottom, they determined it was a whole bunch of small gashes that ultimately weakened this giant ship. And so I want you to kind of take a look at the iceberg that we have on and make some observations on it. One of them I would make the observation of, the iceberg is huge, right? And we only see this part, all right? The iceberg, though, what gets us in trouble, if the Titanic bumped into that, I'm not really that worried about that, all right? If I knew all this was at the bottom, which they probably did not know, then I'm going to be really, really worried about that section, because that is the problem section that we have. And so I want to make this spiritual observation about it. 10% above is what people see. 90% below is your character. All right? So this is how the iceberg then translates to what you and I in our life and the things that happen to us. We show the world 10%. That's all people really see of us. 90% is below the ship. It's the insides of us. It's our character. It's our personality. And that's the part that ultimately will sink a ship. And so we get this idea in American culture today that our hair has to be perfect and our clothes have to be perfect and we have to drive the right car and we have to live in the right neighborhood and we have to have the right kind of shoes or the right watches, and we're really into whether or not our skin is wrinkly. Is it not wrinkly? Is my skin clear? Is it not clear? Or all these things. If you're at my house and you've been a parent to a teenage daughter, you know what that looks like. It's worried about nails constantly. We're buying self-tanner objects and items, and I'm going, baby, you got a real live self-tanner outside. Huh? What are you talking about? I got you a tanning booth, baby. What you talking about? Where's our tanning booth? It's called a sun. Go outside and do like this, and it'll self-tan you. But no, we got to get on there and order from the Ulta or wherever these self-tanners, because it's all about worried about what the outside looks like, rather than what the Bible and church is interested in talking about is what's on the inside. And the Bible even tells us about Jesus that he doesn't look at the outside. He looks at the inside. That he doesn't see male or female. He doesn't see Jew, Gentile. He doesn't see any kind of ethnicity or race. He doesn't see any age or whatever. He just sees what's inside on the heart. But we are the people that are all about what's on top of it. And if you go back to that Titanic and you watch the movie, you see the guy up at the top and he's looking and he sees the iceberg and all he sees is what's on top. And he goes, oh, we can make it through that. Ultimately, his problem was he didn't understand what was on the bottom, and that what was on the bottom is what did irreparable damage to that whole ship and sunk it. Now, if you want to look some more into this, there is a great book, and we may go for it at some point, called Habitudes. It's Habitudes. Tudes, habitus. It's the habits and the actions that develop the leader in you. And here's one of the things that's interesting that book puts forth this idea that the average, most introverted person in the room tonight will influence 10,000 people in his or her lifetime. The most shy, I'm not outgoing, I'm not going to get out there and do anything. You're going to influence 10,000 people in your lifetime. And if that's the case, we want to influence them in the most positive way possible. And part of what we think we're going to influence them by that 10% above the ship. Like they're going to really pay attention to my hair. They're going to really pay attention to the way I look. They're going to really pay attention to my physique. When really what's going to influence people is that 90%, because it is what'll sink the ship, but it's also that thing that can hold the whole ship up. Even if you look at the image of that Titanic, there is a lot in any ship that's underneath the water that's holding it up. And that is the massive thing. And so your character is what's holding up your life and your well-being. So let's take a look. What is character? What do you think character is? Any ideas? Sorry, print's a little bit small, working on some details. But I'm going to say that your character is the sum total of these four things. Number one is your self-discipline. All right? It's what you do if you do what's right, even when you don't feel like it. What is that propensity to do that? So if you were to take some of these actions and go, let me put a 1 to 10 out of that, and go, when I don't feel like doing what's right, will I do it? If I find something that belongs to somebody else, will I just, I don't really want to fool bringing it back in. I'm going to just keep it. Or you go down to the oink joint and you have lunch and they give you way too much change and you go, ooh, my lucky day. Or is the right thing to do to go back and go, I'm going to give that money back and make that obvious right thing. So your character is a sum total of the first part being your self-discipline. The second part being your core values. What are core values? Your core values are principles that you live by. The things that enable you to take a stand. So you have to determine what are some of those core values in your life. One of the things that I'm working on is just a list of core values that we make decisions by. So in your life, you're going to make decisions based on what your core values are. And so if your core value is the outward appearance, then you'll look at some of your decisions and go, man, all my decisions are based on that outward appearance. But if you look and you go, well, my core value is on the inside, then we start making decisions that affect the inside of our life. And we look at those things and the things that allow us to take a stand for things. We have to determine what's right and we have to determine what's wrong. And once we've made that decision, then we get to have our core values take effect in our life. I talk about this all the time with teenagers. There's certain decisions as a teenager you need to make before the pressure's on. You know, you don't want to wait until you're making out with your boyfriend or your girlfriend to decide if you're going to have sex before marriage. You want to decide that ahead of time. You want to decide before the party's happening on Friday night and somebody's got alcohol in your face, am I going to drink or am I not going to drink? Because peer pressure, as a dad, as a parent, we like to think, oh, well, just say no. But as a peer pressure, we remember, man, that's tough. It's tough even right now in our adult years when our other friends are saying, hey, do this, do that. And you've got to make those decisions ahead of time before the pressure's on and before you get to those moments in your life where things get really difficult and before things get out there. What are some of the things that you value? And let me just say this, that's a challenge. All those things are a challenge for adults as well. You know, we have times and we have issues where we're like, maybe you've lost a spouse or something and you're starting to think about dating again. The rules don't necessarily change just because you've been married before. All right? You have to make some of those decisions ahead of time of what the Bible teaches us and the way it commands us to be. We got to look at things like for me, one core value is transformative grace. That one of the goals in my life is I need to give grace to others, and by giving grace to others, I'm expecting and hoping for transformation in that person's life. For instance, if a person is constantly sinning against me or constantly doing something that hurts me, I can show them grace, but my expectation would be they don't continue to hurt me over and over, and I just throw around grace. That's what gets us in abusive relationships. That's what gets us in a jam. We're expecting that grace transforms into something else. Romans 12:2 says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And so he talks about grace coming in our life, and it changes who we are, changes what we're about. And so if we were going to put a 1 to 10 on self-discipline, like how self-disciplined am I? Do I just, buy everything that I think I need or want and let's just get it? Or how often am I going to do the right thing when it's hard? You guys can think of some of those things that are difficult. You know what? Sometimes the right thing is not saying something in some occasions. The Bible says to speak truth in love, but it doesn't always say you got to speak the truth all the time. Like sometimes you just need to go, maybe I just don't need to really make sure, honey, you know that I was right. You just need to be self-disciplined. So if you want to know what your character is, you just kind of go 1 out of 10, where am I self-disciplined? 1 out of 10, where am I in my core values? Am I living by a set of values? Or do I just fly by the seat of my pants and do whatever feels right in that moment? Because what feels right will change. There will be some days where one thing will feel right and another day it will not. And you have to determine some of those things. But the third thing that I would say our character is made up of is our sensitive identity. And that is, in my opinion, a realistic self-image of who God made you to be. A realistic self-image of who it is that God made you to be. One of the things that I struggled with for many years getting in ministry is I had my idols and my heroes in the ministry. And I thought, okay, now how do I be like him in this? How do I be like her in this? And God's going, no, wait, I didn't make you the identical twin to that person. I made you to be you, however you are, and to go for it and to move on with it. For example, in a lot of ways, I'm a self-deprecating type of person. I like to pick at myself. You can't pick at me. I can pick at me because I am me, right? You can pick at me all you want to, honestly. But I tend to be very self-deprecating. When I was the associate pastor over in Greenville, I would preach, and I would always joke, all right, you got the B team today. You got the second string in the game today. And there would always be one or two like, I'm tired of you saying you're the B string. You're not the B string. And I'm going, I don't really think I'm the B string. But it's just my personality. That's the way God made me to be self-deprecating and to think, okay, put myself down instead of building myself up, all this kind of thing. So you got to be you. What does you look like? Do you have a realistic identity of who you are? Because we have this tendency of going and putting ourselves way down here. God says that you're a masterpiece, that you were created in the image of God. And so sometimes we have this image of us that says, I'm worthless, I'm not good enough, I'm not the best. And sometimes other people go, hey, I'm better than you. And we'll identify ourselves much greater than maybe what we ought to be. And so the Bible teaches, do we have a realistic self-identity and a self-image of who God made me to be? What has God made me to do? What has God made me to be like in my personality? How is it that I am living that out in my life on a daily basis? And when you start going 1 to 10 on that, this is where it begins to get a little bit difficult. Because we don't want to rate ourselves too high, and we don't want to rate ourselves too low, because Matt just said that was wrong. But where is that middle where God says, man, this is you. This is right where I need you to learn to be you, that you are good enough, that you are somebody I would die for, that you are in that place, and that yet you're not all the way there yet. because God is trying to continually move us towards perfection every single day. And so if we have a real sense and identity of where we at right now, a lot of times I like to do this at the beginning of the year is just take a minute and go, God, where do you see me in my spiritual walk? Where am I in my spiritual walk? Where do I want to get to? Like if I say between me and God, hey, I think I'm 4 out of 10 in my spiritual walk, then God's ultimate goal is to get you to 5, to 6, to 7. We think we either got to be like all hot 10 or we just might as well be 0. And God's going, just realistically identify where you're at and let's move forward. Let's have that goal of moving forward. So that's part of it, your self-identity. And then I would say the last part about character that I would really put in there is your emotional security. What do you mean by that? I mean, do you have the capacity to be emotionally stable? That affects your character. There are always certain people that'll blow you up every night, every day, because everything's killing them. Everything's killing them. And they get real high, and then they get real low. And there's no, like, steady in between. Like, I know that happened, but I'm still okay. And this happened, and it was really bad, but I'm still going to make it. And so my emotional security is part of that. And so as we begin to take that sum total of all those things, that's where you begin to see your character. And as you get to see your character, you start realizing this is the stuff right here that'll mess your life up. This is the stuff right here that'll sink your ship. This is the stuff right here that'll get you in a crisis beyond crises. This will be where your trials will come from. They're not normally going to come from if your hair's fixed right, if your makeup's done, or if you're a little overweight or you're a little underweight, or if you can bench as much as the next person or not. Those things generally don't have much effect over a couple of seconds, a couple of minutes. But these are the things that'll get you in trouble with your family. They're the things that'll get you in trouble with your relationships. These are the things that'll get you in trouble with your marriages and at work and all these things that happen. These are the ones that change things. And those are the ones that Jesus talks about in this idea of the iceberg. The 10% on top is what everybody sees. Most people don't see your self-discipline. They're not going to see how disciplined you are to do what's right, even when it doesn't feel right, because nobody's seeing that usually. And they don't know. People don't know when they walk by you and see you what your core values are, unless you begin to live those out. They don't see that. And they don't understand and get this idea of your sense of your own self-identity. But they'll see if it's way too high, and they're going to see if it's way too low. But if you have that proper, realistic self-identity, most people are not going to see that. Only you're going to be able to see that. Your emotional security, yeah, it'll play out a little bit in public. But it's your ability to find joy. See, we talk about being happy. Happy or sad is determined upon what happens to you. Joy is just a state of being. And so you're joyful. You may be a little extra happy. You may be a little extra sad. But joyful is that something we're looking for in the in-between. And so these are the things that only you're going to know about. These are the things you're going to lie in bed at night and think about. These are the things that are going to affect your personality, the things that are going to affect your self-esteem, and that's your character. Ultimately, it doesn't matter if you got hair or no hair. If you're the best-looking girl or not the best-looking girl, the best-looking boy or not the best-looking boy. Ultimately, none of that matters. This is what will change your life and set your other parts of your life up in that regard and move you forward. Let's look and see what the Bible says about this. In Luke chapter 6, he says in Luke chapter 6, beginning in verse 43, "For no good tree bears bad fruit, nor again does a bad tree bear good fruit." In other words, if the root system and all of the soil, if all of that's healthy and it's a good tree, you should expect good fruit. If your soil is trash, If the roots are all dried up, if it's all messed up, probably not going to produce fruit. And so he's saying it's the stuff that's underneath. Like we drive by and we see the tree and we go, ooh, look at that pretty fruit. It must be a good tree. What does being a good tree mean? It means that the soil is right. It means that the root structure is good. It means that nutrients are getting into the body of the tree. It means all of those things. He says in verse 44, for each tree is known by its own fruit. For figs are not gathered from thorn bushes, nor are grapes picked from a bramble bush. The good person, out of the good treasure of his heart, produces good. And the evil person, out of his evil treasure, produces evil. For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so he relates it right back to us. What's in our heart, if it's good, it's going to come out good. If it's evil, it's going to come out evil. It's going to come out evil in our wisdom. It's going to come out evil in our talk, in our speech, in the way that we do things. All of that is going to put that into place. Whatever happens on the outside of your life is generally stemming from what happens on the inside of your life. The more we're putting God in, the more God comes out. The more good we put in, the more good comes out. Trash in, trash out. We put trash in, we listen to trash, we only hear trash, we only hear people talk bad about us, then guess what? We begin to think we are bad. We only have a group of friends that put us down, we just think we might as well stay down. But we have to begin to do and to understand that what goes into the treasure and whatever we treasure up, which means we keep, we store it up, we put value in that. So we have to ask ourselves the question, especially in a room tonight with parents and grandparents, what are we teaching our kids to treasure? I can tell you right now, kids right now are so eat up with how many likes they get on Instagram and how many people retweet their picture and how many people approve of their picture. And they see, and it begins with looking at a magazine and they go, look at that model of perfection, guy or girl or whatever, and they don't understand filters, cropping, touch-ups. Like I've been on the phone today with a gentleman, a little shout out to DFM Graphics. He does anything creative, and he's helping us with some signs and some stuff. And the thing is, I went to him one day with my picture to go on a website, and I said, hey, can you make me look good? Can you make me lose 10 pounds? He's like, I'm joking. He's like, oh, absolutely. And so he's got his little pencil in his computer, and all of a sudden, I'm 10 pounds lighter. My cheek structure is perfect. I don't have a double chin. I got hair, and I'm going, well, you can do that? And see, we're looking and we're going, I'm treasuring up what's happened on the outside. And yet God says it's out of the overflow of the treasure that's on the inside. And knowing that God created you just the way you are for the exact purpose and for an exact reason, and God allowed you to be able to be in that place. God puts being, and I think we see this in James, God puts being before doing. He puts being before doing because he prioritizes the heart, because he knows what's in the heart is what will affect what happens on the outside. And so he is, like Paul says and like James says, it's the stuff that's going to happen on the outside is a representation of the change that's been made on the inside. And Jesus, I think, so many times talks about he doesn't see the outside, he sees the inside. And that reason is because he knows what's on the inside will take care of the outside. You're wondering why all this stuff outside is so bad in our lives? And God's going, you don't even have to fix the outside. You just got to fix the inside. You just got to work on the inside. And eventually it'll be amazed the more you work on your inside, how much easier it is to be self-disciplined. How much easier it is to do the right thing when you're putting right things in. And when you're following the right things, how you begin to do that. You'll be amazed when you determine in your own life, what are my core values? Because you'll go, my core value is one for me, transformational grace. Am I going to give grace? Yes, but I expect change. I'm looking for change. Giving generously or gracious generosity. You know what? We're just going to not always looking for something in return in that regard. And so when you begin to go, these are my core values, it affects your decisions. And then you begin to go, well, my decisions are working out better all of a sudden. I'm getting better results from my decision. Well, that's because what determines what decision you make has changed. And then you go, wait a minute, I'm okay the way God made me. Like, I'm really okay with that. I'm not eat up every day with worried about what the mirror says. I'm not worried about what Instagram says. I'm not worried about any of that. And then before you know it, that begins to happen. And boy, that emotional security begins to change. And that changes a lot because we put so much of this into the outside of our life. And we'll go, well, I don't really care what I look like. No, every person in this room cares. I mean, men are going to go, well, I don't care what I look like. I don't care. Well, then why do you trim your beard? Why do you comb your hair? Why do you wipe the booger off your face in the morning? You know, you do that. Why do you brush your teeth? Because you care what you look like. Now, you may not care as much as some other person, and you might not care as much as your wife does, or your wife may not care as much as you do, but we all care for what we look like. We have this running joke at our house that there's 3 closets of clothes at my house that belongs to me. There's a half a closet of clothes at my house that belongs to Carrie. And so she's not real eat up with what she looks like and dresses like. I won the lottery, gentlemen, on the fact she doesn't even like jewelry. She wants to wear her wedding ring, and that's it. I've never had a temptation or a pressure ever to buy her jewelry for anything. And I would, and I've tried, and I've bought some in the past, and it's sat in a drawer because she's not interested in all that. Me, on the other hand, you want to buy me a new watch? Hey, I'm good with new watch. New pair of shoes? I'm good with new pair of shoes. I'll rock them bad boys. And there's and it just goes to show you that there are some things that this plays out differently, and it's not always a guy-girl thing. It plays out differently. Our character turns out to be just a little bit difficult. But let's ask this. I want to ask this question. Why is focusing on the inside so hard? What would you say? Somebody tell me the reason why focus on the inside is so hard. You don't like what you see.
That's who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's hard to focus on the inside, partly all those things you said, but also because I can fix what's on the outside pretty quick. I can throw money at the problem. I don't like my gray. I can cover that up. I can go down to the dollar store and get something to cover up the gray. That's easy. I can fix that. But fixing what's on the inside is hard. It takes more work. It takes more self-discipline. And if our character is already lacking in the self-discipline area, we don't have extra self-discipline to give. And so it becomes really hard for us to focus on the outside. And I think we've already answered the question tonight. Why do we put so much emphasis on the outside? Because it's what everybody sees. It's fixable. It's what we generally take as something. I mean, anybody in this room would say, if you had your picture right here and we all just gloated over how great the picture was and told you how beautiful or handsome you were, and we all talked about that picture, you'd take a sense of confidence in that, and you'd be like, oh, that's really good. And you would get what we talked about Sunday, instant gratification. You would go, oh, I feel good. And all of a sudden, when it's just you alone at night, and you're thinking about your life, that instant gratification goes away, and you begin to reflect on what's the inside. And that we put so much on the outside because it fixes us right quick. But that quick doesn't last. That quick is not eternal. That quick is not something that sustains us through the dark time. That quick is not something that sustains us through even all the bad times. It's all that stuff that happens on the inside that really changes our life. And so I want to challenge you to do one thing this week. And I don't know why the whole thing didn't get there, but I want you to find 2 things this week. I want you to find 2 things this week that you absolutely do not like doing. Just 2. Find 2 things this week that you do not like doing and do it anyway. Do it for somebody else because that affects your self-discipline. That affects your willingness to do it out of the heart. And no, that doesn't mean you only have to cook twice this week at your house. It doesn't mean you only have to fix your hair twice this week at your house. You know, these are the things that, man, you just don't like doing some of those things. And find a way to begin to do them and ask somebody to hold you accountable in doing that. Like if it were me, I think a husband and wife situation is a great accountability thing. Hey, baby, I feel like God's calling me to do this week. I don't normally like doing this, but I'll do it. For instance, well, it's probably a safe bet that my wife doesn't want me to do ironing because I'll burn it. But there are always things in every relationship you're just like, no, I don't want to do that. And God's going, no, do it anyway, and begin to see how it affects your life. Deliberately do them. Now, whether that's buying somebody else's meal out of the blue or buying for the car in front of you at the drive-through. I mean, because a lot of times we're like, hey, yeah, I'll do something for somebody else. Let me make sure I tell people. And God's going, no, that's not exactly what I was getting at. So we want to find 2 things that God has called us to do. And eventually, here's what we'll start noticing. We'll start to realize that's all of who we are. That's just the shell. That's just the part that people see from a distance. But if you really want to get to know me, you're going to know what I am here. And that's the part about me that's going to change your life and change my life and keep me square. Want to know why do I continually fight with my spouse? It's not this. It's this. Why do I continue to have conflicts at work? It's this, not this. Why do I have conflicts with my children? It's this, not this. And sometimes all we want to see is the topical, and we don't want to ever go, look, what's inside of me? What is God creating, and what is God doing in my life? And trust me, that is not just a word that the pastor gives the people. Look I read the Bible, what you might say, professionally, right? I'm a pastor. I'm supposed to read the Bible. It's my work. But do I read the Bible for the sermon? Or do I read the Bible for what it does in my life? And do I put that into my own practice? Am I doing it just to be able to teach? Or am I doing it to really change my life? And the more my life changes, the more you'll see difference. The more your life changes, the more people will go, oh, well, something's changed in their life. They won't see that from here, but they'll see it from here. And I've had so many occasions where I've known people to go through some awful times. And people go, I see now this in you because the bad times brought this out. And if this is the real Christianity, if this is the real you, that I want. They're not looking for our suit and tie on Sundays. The world out there is not looking for your pretty leather Bible on Sundays. The world out there is not looking for the, hey, I just came from church. Look at me. I'm dressed up and I'm at dinner and I'm being mean to my waitress. They're looking for this in us. They're looking for this. Do we really make a difference? Does our insides really make a difference? Does what we learned on Sunday really make a difference? Does this really change how we go through a trial and how we go through a crisis? And we only get that by focusing on what's below the water. That's the part that'll sink the ship. So let's talk about and pray about that. Father, tonight, Lord, we know it's a challenge. Self-discipline is hard. Self-discipline takes self-discipline. It takes courage. It takes motivation. And it takes time. And so, God, give us the patience and the motivation, and give us, God, the desire to change. Give us the desire to grow, to strengthen what's below and what's in the heart of us, what's at our character. God, so easy for us to fix what we think other people want to see. But God, I pray that it would be our ultimate desire to go about and be about the things that you want us to do in our life. And God, as that happens, we begin to give you the glory and the honor for it, and we really see change in the world around us. We ask it today.
Thank you for joining Zebulon's
Amen.
dynamic downtown
Anybody got a
fellowship
prayer sheet?
at Zebulon First Baptist
Anybody
Church.
pass any more
We're
around?
located
Everybody
on the
need one.
square in Zebulon, Georgia, next to
Look,
City
Danny
Pharmacy.
Daniels didn't get one.
If you have not visited with us in person, we invite you to do so. Our Sunday morning
I gotta
Bible
get one,
study
because I
starts at
didn't-
9:45 a.m. and our Sunday morning worship
All right, you'll
service
see the
starts at
list.
11
Anybody got
o'clock
any
a.m.
updates for the-
We would be
the prayer
honored
list
to have
for
you
me?
visit our church. We have a safe and growing children's ministry with volunteers who love children and love having fun. Our youth ministry, the Epic Student Ministry, is a growing and energetic group of students who want to deepen their faith in Christ. Our students serve our community as well as other communities in many ways. If you would like someone to pray with you, or if you have questions about our church, we would be honored to talk to you. Our phone number is 770-567-8498. Our email address is firstzeb@bellsouth.net. Or you can simply send us a private message right here on Facebook. Please be sure to join us next week at 11 a.m. right here for our live stream.